G'day guys and gal. In life, some people just get the short straw, whether it be born as a girl in a poor part of China during their one-child policy, having a couple extra chromosomes, or having the taint of chaos imprinted on your gene seed. These are just some of the things outside your control that can really suck. The Soul Drinkers are a victim of this, noble marines who wanted to do the right thing and maintain their honour, but were subtly yet surely being dragged down to the depths of hell by insidious forces, as well as a few dumb decisions and turning a blind eye to some obviously heretical shit. Today we'll go over who the Soul Drinkers were and why people like them. We'll go over their tragic fall and glorious redemption. Let's get into it. The origins of the Soul Drinkers is very sketchy. Originally, they were supposed to be a first founding Space Marine chapter, being one of the three main Imperial Fist successors alongside the Black Templar and Crimson Fists. Why they chose the name Soul Drinkers, as well as an obnoxious purple colour scheme, is beyond me, and probably should have been the first of many red flags that popped up for these guys. Obviously someone or something with a lot of influence and power was able to forge a very convincing origin story for these guys, and then spent the next 10,000 years trying to push them over the edge. Only a being with great patience, who often enjoyed creating completely unnecessary and wildly costly schemes, would commit so hard to one chapter. I'm sure you can guess who I'm talking about. Before the Taint of Chaos began to taint their taint holes, the Soul Drinkers were a distinguished and renowned chapter, achieving countless victories against Xenos, notably the Elder, and they were one of the chapters who helped overthrow the evilly named George Vandire. As they were supposedly a first founding chapter, they were given a cool spear called the Soul Spear by their supposed Primarch, who supposedly used the weapon. The spear was solid, but due to some fatal warp spaghetti, was lost during a failed warp jump, likely due to the influence of a little someone who likes manipulating events and people. The ship was lost, its crew were likely turned into demonic fleshlights, and the spear somehow ended up on a derelict star fort full of Deros. Now, artifacts given to a chapter by a Primarch are considered their most prized relics. The chapters will do anything and everything to safeguard or recover these items, and I mean anything. So once their Dero Raider started beeping and told them where the spear was, they rushed to go get it. Killing the Deros and smashing their way through the Star Fort was easy. However, just as they arrived to the Soul Spear's storage space, the Mechanicus stole the spear, with the intention of reverse engineering its technology. Now the Mechanicus are not very sentimental, like they replaced their fucking organs like I replaced my cum sock, so they didn't really understand why the Soul Drinkers were so butthurt about losing their spear. The Soul Drinkers also did overreact quite a bit. A rogue strike team invaded the Mechanicus station where the spear was held, causing massive amounts of damage and death. They retrieved the spear and left with the Mechanicus and the Inquisition chasing after them. Before they could get caught, the rest of the Soul Drinkers arrived and the chapter master was like, "Bruh, why did you attack the Mechanicus?" And the marine who led the strike, called Sapedon, was like, "I just like the spear." Hence, whilst the chapter master did cover for his rogue marines, as only a Soul Drinker could judge another Soul Drinker, apparently, he was also obligated to challenge Sapedon to a duel to the death. 'Cause reasons. The two Drinkers of Souls fought, and the chapter master had the upper hand. But then here's where shit gets heretical. Sapedon, out of nowhere, sprouts 8 spider legs and tears the chapter master to shreds. Now if there's one thing that the Emperor doesn't give his marines, it's spider legs. Even angel wings generally come from chaotic mutations, so spider legs are just like a whole nother level of evil. Despite this, Sapedon was like, "Woo, I'm a holy spider," and while some of the chapter rightfully were like, "What the fuck?", a huge portion just kind of accepted the mutation as a gift from the Emperor, rather than very clearly being a boon given by a much more shady individual. The Soul Drinkers who didn't want to be commanded by Spider-Man were killed. Whilst the Soul Drinkers were now excommunicated and heretics, they remained loyal to the Emperor and continued to fight in his name, even with the growing level of mutations in the chapter. Eventually, the chapter didn't find the mutations funny anymore and sought a way to stop it. They sent in a strike team to Stratilix Luminae to retrieve vital information, which allowed them to stop the mutations. If only Magnus knew about Stratix, he wouldn't be down an eye and 1/3 of his soul. Unfortunately, the brave men who retrieved the info had to be abandoned, hence even more unfortunately, they embraced chaos to survive. The Soul Drinkers couldn't stand for this, however. Having your battle brothers turn to chaos was very embarrassing and awkward. Hence, after a shaky team up with some Crimson Fists, Sapedon was able to defeat his chaotic battle brother in a duel, hence withdrew the rest of the Soul Drinkers from the battle. However, the chaos-corrupted Soul Drinker commander survived the duel, only to then be blown up by the Inquisition. Yeah, not really sure they couldn't just give the kill to Sepidon. It's like in Dragon Ball Super when Trunks goes beast mode and cuts Zamasu in half, only for Zamatsu to then become the Sky and get deleted by an autistic childlike god. It really just takes the impact out of it for no particular reason. Growing tired of being a closeted Chaos warband, some of the junior Soul Drinkers tried to take control of the chapter, but Spider-Man wasn't having a bar of it, so he killed some of them and retook control. As a result of this, numerous new Soul Drinkers abandoned the chapter. It would not be long until the Mechanicus was once again hot on their trail, and was able to damage the Soul Drinkers' Space Hulk. The chapter was forced to enter into Necron territory to search for fuel and supplies, but every planet had been completely overrun bar one. They landed on the planet and made a deal with the few humans left. You guys refuel our ship, and we will keep the Necrons off your ass and let you come with us. Good deal. Unfortunately, the Necrons were being dicks and put a fleet in orbit, blocking the Soul Drinkers' escape. Then the Mechanicus force, who wanted to slap the Soul Drinkers, arrived and suddenly were getting clapped by the Necrons. With the Soul Drinkers losing the land battle and the Mechanicus losing the space battle, Sepidon was like to the Mechanicus, "Yo, sorry about the misunderstanding about the Soul Spear. Can we team up so some of us can survive?" And the Mechanicus was like, "Beep boop, Jesus Christ, Necrons are OP. Sure thing, Spider-Man." Somehow, the Soul Drinkers and Bionic Babies were able to get to the Necron Tomb Lord, defeating him and winning the battle. No idea how they did it, but they did, so yay for them. As the Soul Drinkers were heading back to their ships, a large force of Imperial Fists arrived and took the Soul Drinkers into custody. Sepidon was like, "Nah, fuck that, I challenge thee to a duel." Because apparently trial by combat is still a thing 40,000 years from now, Sepidon and the first captain of the Imperial Fist fought, and despite his spidey senses, Sepidon got clapped and his chapter was arrested. Now, all along, Sepidon wasn't a willing pawn of chaos. He did not praise chaos and he fought against it, despite the fact that it had obviously messed with him. However, there was a faction of Soul Drinkers who were chaos followers, and they were led by the Soul Drinker chaplain, Ikintios. During the trial of the Soul Drinkers, a lot of information came to light. One super random point was that a Soul Drinker dreadnought was locked in a tomb somewhere, so they went to go fetch him during the trial. Okay. The Imperial Fist as well as numerous other delegates presented a lot of evidence that didn't look good for the Soul Drinkers, as despite the fact that most of them weren't willing chaos pawns, they were still massive assholes who had attacked the Imperium. As a bit of a spanner in the mix, the Soul Drinkers' gene seed was tested and showed absolutely no connection to the Imperial Fist, meaning that Rogel Dawn wasn't their daddy and they weren't a successor of the Fists. Now, how could one of the first chapters to ever come into an existence have such a mysterious origin? They were supposed to have been in the presence of their Primarch when they were created after all. Well, there is a couple ways. Firstly, agents of Titsnitch in the Imperium could have fabricated the origins of the Soul Drinkers over hundreds of years. Or, they started off as an Imperial Fist successor, but over time, agents of Titsnitch replaced or corrupted their gene seed until it could no longer be traced back to Rogel. Either way, Sepidon was copping a lot of kicks to the dick in this trial. Sepidon began to realise that the chaplain Ikintios was a dick and had been leading his chapter down a not so righteous path. The most cooked and once again least necessary part, however, is the fact that the random dreadnought that they randomly found and was brought to the trial was actually the evil mastermind all along, and Chaplain Ikintios was just one of his loyal followers. Like what? Near the end of the trial, more agents of Titsnitch freed the Soul Drinkers, causing a huge firefight to take place on the Phalanx, which is the Imperial Fist ship where the trial is being held. I mean, if I was a Soul Drinker trying to prove I wasn't a heretic, I wouldn't leave my cell, and I definitely wouldn't start attacking loyalists, but you know, hey, that's just me. Sepidon also escaped, but knew that he had to take out the Dreddy and the Chaplain. Unfortunately for him, the evil Joe had managed to open up a warp gate in the depths of the Phalanx, hence a demon army poured out and began attacking everyone. Apparently it was the evil Dreddy's ambition to take over the Phalanx and use it as his personal ship. Sure thing. As the last of the Soul Drinkers were being gunned down by the Imperial Fists, the Fists suddenly withdrew. The demons were flooding the Phalanx, and there was a way bigger priority than killing some of their adoptive cousins. The Soul Drinkers heard about what was happening and went to the Imperial Fists and begged to let them fight the demons alongside them. At this point, the Soul Drinkers knew that they were fucked and wanted to die with honor and restore some integrity to their chapter's name. While that was happening, Sepidon tracked down the evil chaplain Ikintios and killed his followers. The two Astartes fought, with Sepidon coming out on top. Using some hectic mind-raping powers, Sepidon was able to rip knowledge from the chaplain's mind, turning the chaplain into a vegetable before then throwing him out of the airlock. With Starscream dead, it was time to now fight Megatron. Sarpedon confronts the evil Dreddy and the two of them punch on. Sarpedon suffers multiple mortal wounds, but suffering a mortal wound in 40k is like stubbing your toe. It's not ideal, but it's a far cry from being fatal. The evil Dreddy gets the upper hand, but then Sarpedon whips out the Soul Spear and one-shots him. He then drags the evil Dreddy out of the Dreddy, thus making him an evil fetus man. Meanwhile, in the battle against the demons, the Soul Drinkers and the Imperial Fists are victorious, with only 2 Soul Drinkers surviving. These 2 Marines decide that there is no place for them in the galaxy, and that it's time to say goodbye, hence they step through the warp gate as it was shutting. Now sure, if you want to pop a suey, go for it, but walking into the warp is a horrible way to die. They say that when demons enter real space, they're like a fish out of water, but when mortals enter the warp, it's like a fish in a furnace. On top of that, your soul is in a very compromised position. I personally would have just blown my brains out, but that's just me. Sarpedon carries a still living evil fetus to the warp gate, and he explains to the Fist what actually happened and why the Soul Drinkers went a bit rogue. He blamed it all on Titsnitch, the Dreddy, and the Chaplain, but he left out the part where the Soul Drinkers had also been dicks. After clearing his chapter's name, Sarpedon reopens the warp rift and walks through it, his evil Dreddy fetus in tow, hence bringing an end to the Soul Drinkers. At least for the moment. See, by them redeeming their name and honour in the last few hours of their existence, they paved the way for a new Primaris chapter to be founded in their honour. Hence, the Soul Drinkers do live on in the current setting in some way. As they don't share the same gene seed, for obvious reasons, it's more of a tribute than anything, but it still counts. The tale of the Soul Drinkers is one of a short straw, men trying to do the right thing in the wrong way. I can see why people like them. And that does us for today, guys, the lore and story of the Soul Drinkers Space Marine chapter. If you enjoyed the video and want to support the channel, then Patreon is the place to be. Where only $1 per month give you access to a boatload of Warhammer hentai. Hit the subscribe button, then hit the real subscribe button for more tingly content. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.